My wife Teresa worked at a local dental clinic. She had Wednesdays and Sundays off. Over the years, I had risen through the ranks in my company and had recently been promoted to vice president. I couldn't help but notice the fact that the higher I climbed the ladder, the less I actually had to do. When I returned to the office after lunch, I realized that there was almost nothing on my desk. I had a good team, and I trusted them enough to delegate the work I was responsible for. We're not in rocket science. Just hire the right people and pay them enough to keep them loyal. As I paced around the office for the 100th time, it occurred to me that it was Wednesday and Teresa should be home. Why be vice president if I can't leave early every now and then? I told the secretary I was leaving and asked her to call me on my cell phone if I was needed. I hopped in my SUV and headed home. On the way, I thought about how surprised Teresa would be to see me. In my 19 years with the company, I had never come home before 3 times, and that was because I was so sick I could barely stand. As I pulled up to our house, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway. As I parked, I gave it another glance. It was one of those ridiculous-looking cars I thought was a Mini Cooper. Teresa had shown some interest in them, but I'd rather not be seen in one of those newfangled Volkswagen Beetles. I hate them. Opening the front door and listening to determine which room Teresa and her visitor were in, I casually inquired who had come, and heard nothing in reply. As I walked through the downstairs, I caught an earful of faint sounds from the bedroom upstairs. I went up the stairs as quietly as I could, for I had a bad feeling. I even remembered to step over the 5th step, which always creaked. It became obvious that the sounds were coming from the marital bedroom, and it wasn't me making them. There's a real problem in my house. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, so I crept closer and peeked into the room. What I saw was immediately imprinted in my brain forever. I could see the ass of a medium-sized guy. He was completely naked, and clearly had someone. I could make out Teresa's legs wrapped around his waist and her ankles clasped together. The door was only slightly ajar, and I couldn't see anything else, nor should I have. I stepped back and leaned against the wall, fearing I was going to throw up or pretend I was dead. As I tried to calm down, the bastard started talking. "You like being with me, don't you?" he asked demandingly. "The hubby doesn't have such a good time with you, does he?" Teresa would never allow that kind of speech, especially not to her. That's all I knew. And then I heard her moan in agreement. How could a woman I knew so well do this to me? In my house? In our marital bed? With some loser with shit pouring out of his mouth? My first impulse was to storm in there and beat the shit out of the guy and then slap Teresa. My anger was scaring me. I'd always managed to keep my emotions under control to avoid legal trouble. This was the only time I was willing to go lawless. Then I thought about my 2 children and my job. When I kick her cheating ass out on the street, she'll want half of everything. And if I end up in jail, I'll probably lose my job and she'll have everything. Somehow my brain returned to normal functioning mode, and I realized I could always find this asshole and kill him, and Teresa wouldn't be going anywhere if she thought I didn't know her goddamn dirty secret. I felt like I had 2 choices. I could accept Teresa's infidelity and hope that her affair would eventually end, or I could take revenge. The right choice under these circumstances has been debated since Adam and Eve, but I personally didn't have a moral dilemma. I just needed time to plan. I walked out of the house as silently as I entered, wrote down the bastard's license plate number, and returned to my car. Then I did what any normal guy would do when concentration and clear thinking are so necessary. I drove to the local watering hole. The clarity of thought and the obviousness of the right answers is directly proportional to the amount of beer I drink. I drank 4 mugs in the first hour, and strangely enough, they didn't help, so I drank a few more. And that was the weirdest part. I didn't even get drunk, I just got angry. Then I got moody, and I felt completely alone. As I sat there and thought about Teresa, I realized that she had permeated every part of my being. She was what made me complete. I couldn't blow my nose or wipe my ass without thinking about how she would want me to do it. I excelled at work mostly because she always pushed and encouraged me to want the best and feel like I could do better. She made me feel confident and equal to any macho man. That bitch was so sneaky. I never realized that she made me addicted to her. She was like a drug. I always told myself I could quit smoking at any time. The truth was, I was addicted to a goddamn cheating whore. Can I buy a patch or something to help me kick the habit? Is there any kind of sanctuary I could use? There was probably a support group somewhere where I could stand up, give my name, and then admit that I was addicted to this slut. That scenario was too embarrassing, and I quickly dismissed the thought. I sat back and tried to think of a solution. It would have to involve something like the guy who slept with Teresa dies after his balls are crushed and then ripped off. Teresa had to somehow feel that losing me was a bad thing. I could never hurt her physically. I knew that, with a certainty that prevented even the thought of such an act. Even after everything I had seen, I knew I would go to hell to save her from harm. That was the part that made me so angry. She had me. She had insidiously taken possession of my soul. Maybe she's some kind of witch or something. I was bound much more securely than if I'd been chained hand and foot. How the hell did this happen? Why hadn't I noticed any warning signs that my will was no longer my own? Hell, I hadn't even noticed when her affair started. I was happy as a pig splashing in shit, and I thought she was too. It became obvious that the revenge plan wasn't going to be easy. She couldn't have any real feelings for me to do what she did. If I killed myself, she would laugh all the way to the bank. I was the one with no real power over her. I couldn't make her suffer. It was then that the beer finally took effect and clarity flooded my brain, dispelling the fog. Revenge didn't have to be immediate to be enjoyable. Quite the opposite. It would be so much sweeter that way. It was then that the stupidest revenge plan ever devised by mankind was born. I began to smirk as I realized that the genius of my plan lay in its very simplicity. I decided to be the perfect husband, friend, lover, and partner. I was going to have a dead grip on her soul, just as she had on mine. She was going to need me and depend on me so much. That's what would really hurt her when I kicked her cheating ass to the curb. I realized it wasn't conventional wisdom to get back at a cheating whore wife, but maybe no one had ever thought of that before. I could probably write a self-help book and make a fortune off of it after I'm done. Feeling refreshed, I paid the bill and headed for the door. Beer was my best friend, and it was with me again. It's just that some jerk had set up a table just where I was trying to pass, and I knocked someone's mug over with my ass and slipped on the spill. After I got to my feet and assured the concerned bartender that, "I'm fine, eek," I headed for the exit again. The clarity of my consciousness did not extend to my limbs, which had lost most of their sensitivity. The drive home was long and arduous. I almost got lost in those 2 blocks from the bar to my house, but eventually I leisurely entered my house, ready to proceed with my devious plan. "Joe, are you okay?" Teresa asked. "I'm fine, thank you. Darling, why do you ask?" I objected gently. "Well, just a couple things, honey," Teresa smiled. "Your shirt is torn, your pants are dirty, you have a bruise on your cheek, you're 3 hours late, and you're covered in shit. Damn, this is going to be harder than I thought." She was good. Really good. My mind was racing as I thought about how to be the perfect husband. "Do you want me to take out the trash, honey?" I asked. Teresa threw me an inscrutable look. "Or would you rather we go to the mall and buy you some new clothes?" She stared at me like I had 3 heads. "How about we try to get tickets to the ballet?" I quickly added. I knew she liked him. "How hard did you hit your head, Joe? Sit here and let me look at that bruise," Teresa insisted. Damn, that's how she'd taken control of me, being so attentive and caring. I sank heavily into the chair. Teresa walked over to the sink, wet a napkin, and wiped my face, scrutinizing me closely. Her touch still gave me goosebumps. There were a few wrinkles on her face, but I realized she was even more beautiful than the day I married her, and back then she was really hot. She had gained a few pounds, but that just added to her feminine charm. I felt myself getting turned on as I watched her move around me, checking out my head and face. I reached out and ran my palm over her round ass. Had she always been so tight and firm? Why hadn't I noticed how nice it was before? I learned years ago that if you hit a man on the head and he gets an erection called priapism or something like that, he probably has brain damage, Teresa suggested. "I'm going to call an ambulance, Joe. I think you might have a head injury. It's like a rock in there, and it's bothering me," she admitted. "My plan has already failed." I stood up and took the phone from her. I remembered her wrapping her legs around some dude that day, and my whole plan fell apart. The beer was running out, and the anger was coming back. "I thought a little slut like you would think of something better to do," I chuckled. What did you say? A stunned Teresa asked. What did you call me? I'm 6 feet tall and weigh 185 pounds, while Teresa is 2 inches taller than 5 feet and has never weighed more than 120 pounds. I just picked her up in my arms and headed upstairs to the bedroom. Joe, you're not feeling well. We need to get you to a doctor, she pleaded. I had to give her credit. Over the years, she'd given me several strange reasons not to have sex, but this one took first prize. I threw her on the very bed where she had played hide the sausage without me a few hours earlier. It occurred to me that she was probably worried. She knew I would find signs of recent sexual activity on her body. She was dressed in a baggy shirt and loose shorts, and I simply reached out and pulled the shirt over her head before she guessed my intention. Joe, you're hurt and need attention, she pleaded again. I'll show you what needs attention, I wheezed. Joe, I don't know what happened tonight, but you were great. That was the best sex I've ever had, baby. Those names you called me and your intensity turned me on so much that I had to do everything I could to please you like the slut you made me. She grinned. Then she kissed me and I hugged her, wondering how I could live without her. And then I saw the proof I was looking for. In the corner were the sheets that had previously been on the bed when that asshole had her. I set the trap. Honey, why is there dirty laundry on the floor? I asked as calmly as I could. I know you'll be angry when I tell you, honey, Teresa warned. Promise me you won't try to beat the shit out of this guy. My blood boiled again. Promise not to kill that piece of shit? Hardly. What guy, sweetheart? I cooed. I was very proud of my cold-blooded demeanor even after the effects of the beer had faded. Promise? Teresa insisted. I crossed my fingers behind my back and replied, Promise, I was going to kill that bastard. Remember I told you last week that I had to go to a seminar today on how to properly fill out insurance forms at work? Teresa asked. Did she tell me that? I also made the mistake of telling Louise that I would be gone all day. You know she has some family problems, right? When I got home, she was in our bed, drunk as a monkey and sleeping with some jerk she picked up at a bar, Teresa continued. She brought him here so Jack wouldn't catch her. My head was spinning. It wasn't Teresa who was cheating. It was her stupid sister. I remembered her telling me she had to go to some seminar. I just never paid attention to it. Teresa still loved me and wasn't a promiscuous wench. Then I remembered that I had called her that. She must have thought it was just sex and nothing personal. I dodged a bullet. I was furious and kicked them out of here. I don't know his name. Don't even ask. He's not worth your time or trouble, Teresa assured me, stroking my cheek. Are you upset? I was delirious with joy. A huge burden was lifted off my shoulders. I grabbed Teresa and kissed her hard. My heart was breaking. You can't be responsible for every stupid stunt your sister pulls, honey. I love you so much, I whispered in Teresa's ear. Then I heard the words that brought me back to earth and almost ruined my evening. I love you too, darling. I'm going to go online now and order tickets to the ballet.